Welcome to the Careers by Jen podcast, episode 269. On this episode of the podcast, Jen talks about how to get your motivation back after time off. Because sometimes even not being able to pay your bills or buy food is enough to overcome the inertia of chips and Netflix.
You're listening to the Careers by Jen podcast. I'm your host, Jen Swanson. This is the podcast that helps you to get the job, love your work, and advance your career. Careers by Jen is a listener-sponsored podcast, and if you like the content, please consider supporting the show as a patron. You can do so for as little as $1 a month. Head over to CareersbyJenn.com and click on support to learn more. Did you have time off this summer? Are you anticipating time off this fall? Or maybe you had time off because of COVID and all that's involved in being isolated or in quarantine. Well, no matter why you were off, how easy is it for you to get back into work and to feel motivated, I wonder? That is our topic for the show today. And welcome to Careers by Jen. This is the podcast where I help you to get the job that you want, to love the work that you do, and to advance your career in whatever way that looks like for you. Through one-to-one coaching, through this podcast, through a new and fledgling YouTube channel, through a book that I wrote and some online courses, my entire goal is to help you to quit doing work you don't want to do and to help you to step into your success by figuring out what you're interested in, what you want to be doing, and then by helping you to get there. That's my whole goal across everything that I do. So welcome to the podcast, which is one aspect of Careers by Jen and everything that I'm trying to do. Careers by Jen is recorded in British Columbia, Canada, and is brought to you from the unceded and traditional territory of the Salish people, including the Matsqui, the Kwantlen, and the Katzie First Nations. And so, my friends, this episode is all about how to get your motivation back after time off. I sometimes struggle with this, except that I don't struggle with it so much anymore. And that's because I'm really thankful for the work that I am doing, that I get to do work that I love, that I'm working with people and in a community that I adore and feel energized by and am excited about in the ministry work that I do. And I really love coaching, and I really love talking one-to-one with people and doing the work that I do at Careers by Jen. So I don't have as much a problem with this as I have had in some of my previous career pathways and choices. But it's not as big a struggle as it has been for me. Even though I do love what I do, it's still a little hard sometimes to get out of that relaxed and rested mode that happens when you're away on vacation, when you've had, even if you're not away, because most of us can't be away right now, but even if you're into the slower pace, if you are not using an alarm clock, if you have put down your to-do list, my favorite. If you're into that, well, what shall we do today vibe, that you get on vacation, it can be really hard to go from that right back into a full-on work week and all that comes with it. So can you resonate with the challenge, with the struggle? And so that's what I want to talk about today, is some ways to help you get back into it if you have to. If you have to leave that vacation and get back in to your work, which most of us do at some point. And I want to say that there are ways to make it harder and ways to make it easier. I also want to talk a little bit about motivation itself before we get into I didn't count how many different pieces of advice to help you. I wanted to talk about motivation. Now, motivation is a fair weather friend. It is not a reliable companion. And what I mean by that is that motivation is not something that you can check off a list. Oh, I've got motivation now. Check. You can't do that. It's not a guarantee. It comes and goes. It's not even a good thing to measure because it's not sustainable. So, and here I'm doing a whole podcast on it, right? Motivation isn't good enough. And there are whole books on this topic because motivation comes for a little while and then it disappears. It's like, people make up New Year's resolutions and get all motivated and excited. And then 2 weeks in, or even 1 week in, the motivation, the drive, that desire to continue fizzles out. And unless you've got good habits in place, then you may not continue with that thing you were so excited about, because motivation is emotional and it has to do with thinking about the outcomes and the hope and what you might get if you do this and this and this. So motivation is, we all have it, hopefully, at some point, and it's excellent, and I love to get motivated. It helps me to do things, but what is sustainable and reliable and automatic is habit. And so habit is a much better companion in many, many ways. So to get back to work and to doing what you need to do and to feeling okay about it, or even good about it, which is the aim, then there are some things that you can actually do to lessen that after taking a break or vacation dread or dauntedness. I don't even think that's a real word. I just made it up. That daunting feeling that you might have about going back to work. So there are some tips and tricks, and some of these are obvious and some of these might not be. So here you go. The first one is to be rested before you get there. And that can be a challenge. For some of you, this is not going to be a challenge because all you do on your vacation or your downtime is rest. Fabulous. Good for you. I don't work that way, and sometimes a vacation or a break is not particularly a rest, especially if you've got a ton of stuff on your vacation to-do list. Yes, I have one of those that keeps you as busy, or gets you doing things that, all those other things that are not work that you want to get done. So I think I mentioned it in one of the other episodes. I am actually on a sabbatical from my ministry work right at the moment, which is amazing. And I feel so blessed to have this time. And I am just now, a month into it, starting to actually slow down and lie around and read books and rest. And I think I've watched Netflix twice in a month, but that is because I wanted to do all of the canning for the season, because it's fall here when I'm recording this, and we had the load of apples, and we had the pears, and we had the peaches, and we had the all the fruit that was fresh and in season and that needed to be dealt with and put up for the winter. And so I did a whole bunch of canning, making jams and chutneys and jellies and stuff. So that was something on my list that I love to do, and love to pull that stuff out for family dinners and stuff. And so I had that to do. I also planted a fall garden and was doing some outside things, and I've got a whole lot of outside furniture that I want to paint and do some outside decorating. So I do have a list of outside things, but I've also signed up for a number of courses that I'm taking online, because right now everything is online, and I've signed up for a number of different learning opportunities in different spheres. And so I'm doing some of that as well. But the rest and relaxation part that is supposed to be 1/3 of my sabbatical, I am only just getting into. So I'm one of these people that works, and if the vacation is a week long or 2 weeks long even, it's really hard for me to rest. So if you are like me in that, then I totally understand the old expression that says I needed to come back to work for a rest. Now, this may not be you. It might be that you just stop everything and you're really good at resting and relaxing. And if so, good for you, and you won't need this piece of advice. But this piece is get rested before you have to go back to work. Because if you've had a busy time being off, you may, and you're feeling exhausted, it's not a good sign. It's really hard then to feel like going back to work if you are wiped out. Now, for most people, even if you've had a very busy time off, and if you're listening to this in non-COVID times and are able to travel again, I know when I travel, I love to explore. So it's not usually a rest. I like to be out meeting people and eating the local food and exploring all of the scenery and the sights. So it's often not a rest either. And I completely understand that. But if you are feeling exhausted and you have been resting and you're still feeling tired and like you're unmotivated and you don't, you're dreading going back, then that's not a good sign. That could well be the beginnings of burnout. So pay attention. Are you exhausted because you ran yourself ragged on your time off from your work? Or are you exhausted even after lying around for a week and not doing much? Because there's a big difference in that. So this piece of advice is that basically trying not to stay up too late the night before you have to head back to work, and getting a good sleep and as much rest as you can, maybe the day before, maybe on your last day of vacation, so that when that alarm goes off, you don't feel like the walking dead going back into your place of work. Because that's no fun. And, if you've been off for an extended period of time, it's good to come back rested and refreshed and ready to go again. So that was a very long segment, but make sure you are rested before you get to your first day back. All right. The second thing is to get up early. Yeah, get up early so you aren't rushed. Now, again, I recognize that this may not be your style at all. I personally need lots of time in the morning to have coffee, to do my workout, to make my shake and drink it, to get showered and dressed and all that stuff, and then to head off to work. So I like an hour and a half to 2 hours. Can you believe it? I like an hour and a half to 2 hours before I actually have to leave. And if it's beautiful weather out, I'll take that coffee and sit out on the deck in the sunshine for a little while. Get my sun rays on my face, some vitamin D, listen to the birds, and just have a few moments of peace and tranquility. So it depends. You might be the kind of person who gets out of bed and is out of the house in 15 minutes. I don't know. And if you can do that, that's great. But I still suggest that you might want a little extra time waking up if you haven't had an alarm on for days and days, to get your bearings, to get moving, and just to get back into the routine, so that you can feel yourself when you get to work. So getting up a little bit early, even if it's just a few minutes early, to get moving a little bit and to eat something maybe before you go. So that's the second thing. The third thing is to dress up a little bit. Now, if you work somewhere where what you wear matters, like where you have to be in business casual or business formal, where you don't wear a uniform or coveralls or something, then dress for a good day. Dress like it's going to be an excellent day. Dress to feel good about your possibly unmotivated self. The fake it till you become it thing. Your unmotivated self who may rather still be at the lake or lying on the couch instead of in your bathrobe or whatever, instead of being dressed and out the door and on your way. But if you do wear a uniform or something and you can't actually style it or dress up, then maybe you can do something else to make yourself feel good and spiffy. New shoes, new underwear, new haircut, even maybe something new in your lunch that you're packing with you that day, right? Something delicious and yummy that you can, some kind of treat or fresh thing to make yourself feel good on your first day back. Doesn't have to be anything anyone else can even see or notice, but just so you feel a little extra good on your first day back. So that's a little bit of do something to treat yourself. The next thing has to do with habit and routine. I talked a little bit about habit. If you normally work out or take the dog for a walk or sit and read for a little bit or stop at your local coffee shop to get your morning cup of something, whatever your usual workday morning routine or habits are, make sure you do those things and it will make your day seem normal again. Things feel more natural when they are routine or when they are habit, and the faster you can get back into that, the more natural it will feel. So habits and routines are really good to jump back into on your first day back to help you feel like, okay, self, we're off to work and this is what we do, right? Okay, the next thing is to start small. And I'm talking now about your actual work when you get there. Now, maybe you're still working at home on the computer, as many of us are. And so what kind of routine have you gotten into for that? If you're not commuting somewhere else, do you have some kind of a routine that you do before you start your computer up to work, or you get your phone out, or whatever it is you're doing when you're working from home? So that's a possibility too. So starting small refers to the actual work, assuming you have the kind of work that you have some autonomy over, that you can decide, that you are able to decide what to tackle first. Now, if not, if you're in the kind of work situation where you have to leap right back in and there is no choice as to when or how to start, because you're in an industry where, you have customers coming in, or you are serving people, or things have to happen for you to do your work, chiropractor office, whatever it happens to be. Or you're teaching, there are things that you can't start slow. You have to jump right back in. But if you are able to start back slow, if you're in a situation where you don't have to do it all at once, then if you're going back to a desk with a pile of stuff that you have to get to, then sometimes all it takes is to get going on one task, even if it's something very small. And once you've done that task, then guess what? You've started back to work. You've gotten going again. And it's good for you. It's like a snowball, right? It can get bigger and bigger. And then by lunchtime, it's, you're back. Even if your brain is not fully back, your body is back. So I would suggest maybe not doing email too much, though. I know that if your inbox is anything like mine, you could get lost in that space for hours. Maybe even days. So maybe give yourself a time limit if you have a huge inbox to come back to, as to how much time you're going to take to check that email. Maybe 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes after lunch, 30 minutes before you leave, or something. If you're able to do that, ease back into it, because that can be daunting. And honestly, if it's your first day back after vacation and everyone knows you've been gone, no one's going to expect you to have all of your emails read and answered in the very first day that you're back. So people usually will cut you some slack there. I'm a little bit nervous about going back after 3 months, because I have definitely not looked at that inbox. That's one thing I'm afraid about. All right. Okay. The next thing is to keep learning. Work can be pretty dull and boring if you're not feeling stimulated by what it is that you're doing. And there's almost always something new that you can learn about your industry, about your particular organization, even about humanity and how people behave and how people communicate with one another. There's stuff to learn about technology. There's so many things to learn. At least I believe that that's true. And learning can help you to feel motivated again and invigorated about your work. And this almost always works for me. And usually if you've been gone for a week or 2 or 3 or several, things will have carried on without you, and things will have happened. There will be things to catch up on and things to learn about, reports to read of meetings you didn't have to attend, conversations with colleagues. There's probably a lot to get yourself reoriented to. and that you can find out about. Now, if you don't believe there's anything more for you to learn where you are, then if it's the same old, and that is really obvious when you come back from your break, then you might have a very different issue, and you might need to consider whether staying in this position is in your best interest, right? That's a completely different situation. And if that's true, you can send me a message. You can check out coaching packages if you're interested. It's almost impossible to feel motivation if it just isn't there anymore at all. It's one thing to feel unmotivated because you've had such a good time away and you've gotten used to not working. That's one thing. But usually what you like about your work and your chosen path comes back pretty quickly once you get back into it. It's like, oh yeah, I like these people. I like this place. I like this work that I'm doing. But if it doesn't, if you dread it and you aren't happy and you no longer like what you're doing, if the color has gone out of it, then no amount of back to work coping advice is going to get you motivated again. And that's a much bigger issue. So yeah, so it might be time to think about, what can I do next? Or what can I promote into? Or maybe there's a project you can take on or something else that you can do to bring that feeling of enjoyment back, because life is too short. Life is too short to be in a crappy job that you don't enjoy. All right. So if this is just regular after vacation lack of motivation, then learning something can get you going again and can keep you enjoying what it is that you do. The last thing that I have for you today is the last piece of advice, which is just to power through that first day. Honestly, it might take a day, it might take 2 days, especially if you've been away for an extended period of time. So cut yourself some slack, be gentle with yourself, be kind to yourself, do what absolutely needs to be done. And by the end of the week, you should be back on and up to where you were before. And then guess what? It'll be the weekend and you'll get a couple days off again, hopefully. Those are the pieces of advice that I have for you. Be rested, get up early, dress up or treat yourself in some way, get back to your habits and your routine. Start with a small task when you do get back to work if you're able to. Keep learning, and if nothing else, power on through, because by the day 2 or even by the end of the day, maybe you'll feel like you're back. And maybe you have other ideas that would be helpful to the rest of the people listening to this podcast. So if you do have other ways that help you to get back into it after time off, please let me know and I will share those. So send a tweet, message on Instagram or Facebook. You can find me everywhere at CareersbyJenn with 2 N's, because I would love to hear your ideas and your suggestions for ways that you get to be motivated again. And if you have a moment, please go over to YouTube and check out my little wee videos. I can't remember if there's 5 or 6 videos out there. If you have a moment, I'm happy to have you go and look at that. And next week, folks, is the once a month guest episode. And so I am bringing you a fantastic guest this next week. His name is Bobby Davis Jr. And let me tell you, I absolutely loved this conversation. It's all about getting a job in the tech industry. And honestly, if I was younger, this program that he's got, this boot camp that he's got, sounds absolutely amazing. And I'm not a super computer savvy person, but he was so inspiring and we had such a fun conversation. So I encourage you that if you know anyone, if you or anyone you know is looking to get into the tech sector, or if you have no idea what to do and are in the least bit creative and like to solve problems for people, take a listen to next week's episode because Bobby really, really loves what he does, and you can just tell. So that's next week. I'm very excited to be bringing you that, and I hope today's was helpful for you. And until next time, this is Jen. Take good care. You've been listening to Careers by Jen with Jen Swanson. If you like what you heard, please share this. You know, if every single person listening today shared this episode with just one friend, our audience would be twice as big just like that. And the more people we can help with our content, the better. So help out a friend and help grow our audience by sharing this show with someone you know who would benefit from the content. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that, and together we can make a difference. Until next time, take good care.